Hello, welcome to Dissident Canada. My name is Tyler. Today, once again, on Friday, Trump and Xi declared an increase to the trade war, which it was probably going to continue happening no matter what happened. And I think some things happened that forced China's hand, and then Trump was like, no, I must be the escalator at all times, so I will escalate the situation. You always have to respond. Well, sometimes you can ignore. But, yeah, I think this was pretty much always going to happen because one of the reasons is that Trump refuses to do diplomacy the way it has been shown to work throughout history. Well, if you're, you know, relatively open, relatively honest, or at least you don't outright lie. Yes, you do hold things back, but you don't lie. Diplomacy is relatively easy when you do things like that, and you regard that everybody has their red lines and you negotiate within those red lines. It's relatively easy to cut a deal. Even if the people you are negotiating hate you, at a geopolitical level, it is sometimes very easy to get a deal. But when you constantly flip flop and go hot, then go cold, and then say, no, I mean this, and then no, I mean this, it's very hard to negotiate against that. Now, it works for Trump in the business world because, like, it's easier in the business world. There's no, like, if you want to do a deal with Trump, you're playing his game, right? And he's always going to play his game. And to a certain extent, that's the same with Trump as the president. Like, you're going to play the United States game because they are the world hegemon, and there's really no way getting around that. But there's not, hey, we're going to all make a whole lot of money, and that's the only goal on the line. There's very much egos, ideologies, and how much and what you can sell to your people, so on and so forth. It's a different game, so to speak. So why this looks to have happened, or at least in my opinion, has to do with what Trump's doing in South America. And for that matter, Canada as well, because we also, in the lead up to this, Xi saying, well, China saying, we're going to restrict rare earths and other valuable and important minerals and metals, the export of those. In the lead up to that, you had Carney and Trump singing, hey, it looks like, we're going to head towards a deal. Even though Carney has recently stepped that back, I think that's mostly for political images. Saying, like, well, when we renegotiate, was it USMCA or whatever that thing is that I can never remember what the treaty name is. When that finally gets renegotiated, Carney was saying, it's probably not going to cover everything. There'll probably still be some things that are tariffed and whatever. Like, I think that's just Carney seeing that he looked like a baby back bitch and walking it back, trying to be like, well, we're going to do our best and we'll negotiate tough for Canada. That type of deal. And then you also had the credit swap line extended by the Treasury, which is something not usual for the United States. It usually comes from the Fed. The Treasury doesn't have to do anything in it. And the fact that it's Besson doing it, and it's probably a power play, and leading to what I think in the long run will happen is the Fed will merge back into the Treasury, and the Treasury will then have all the power. But what this does is you're seeing Canada, which does have a lot of rare earths and other very important critical minerals and other things that China is right now dominant player in. Like they make almost 50% of the refined rare earths and minerals and so on and so forth. Dominant player. Uh, you can basically say they have a monopoly at like 48% or whatever it is. But Canada does have a lot of those rare earths, and so does Argentina, where the swap lane was extended, which is buying that country. $20 billion to buy access and kick the Chinese out of Argentina, potentially get a military base in there, get access to the rare earths and the energy sector. That's a pretty good deal. I'm just gonna say that because, like, if you just look at the economics, the strategic location is probably of kicking the Chinese out is probably worth 5 times that. Critical minerals are probably worth 1.5 times to more of that, and you know, energy sector, you know, energy supply in Argentina is probably worth again at least 5 times, if not 20 times more. So you're dealing with you spent 20 and you're getting a massive payoff on return. It's a good move. I still don't like the fact of getting involved in other countries' shit, but if your plan is to take it to China, which everything Trump seems to do is always about China, all right, and on top of that, you have a continued buildup of military presence in Puerto Rico. I was just listening to Brett Johnson talk about this on what's his channel called? Milkshake Pod, Sunday show. Go watch it. Continued build up military presence in Puerto Rico, and it looks like they're preparing probably first to go into Venezuela and then continued actions throughout Central and South America, likely to push out the cartels, destroy them, which pushes out China. That's their way in. Which will cut off an ungodly amount of money that the Chinese are making by selling precursors and giving all the strategic and logistical support they do to the cartels, as well as weapons and ammo and all that other stuff they're likely selling to the cartels. So is the CIA, but, whatever. So, like, you have a Monroe Doctrine actually working right now fairly well and keeping China out of, or pushing them back out. So it's no surprise that as there's an announcement of, hey, Xi and Trump are going to meet and they're going to work through this stuff, that this starts to grow in, you also then have the rumor of Xi having a stroke this past week. I cannot confirm it. It is a rumor at best. Nobody actually knows as of now. Like, it seems that China would absolutely, on the political stage, ramp up and say, no, we're going to restrict all this stuff. And then Trump being like, the hell you are, 100% tariffs on everything. As of recording right now, I have not seen a White House press release that you normally saying, being, here's all the exemptions. So, obviously the markets did not like this. Bitcoin really did not like this. But that's kind of expected. Like, this is a big wrench, and what the power clash very much could reshape the world. You're looking like Trump wants to disentangle a lot more of America from China, and China wants to do the same. The problem that both of them have is they kind of need each other. China needs someone to sell their shit to, and needs massive investments in dollars. So they need to have a relationship with the United States. If you don't believe that China needs massive amounts of dollars, look at when they started selling their treasuries, even though it's technically not selling, they're offshoring them to Belgium in Belgian banks in like Euroclear. So not exactly selling, but they are in effect selling and then buying. It's really just swapping. But mainland China suffers. Every time a country goes through and their central bank starts selling treasuries, all varieties, whether they're T bills or long term bonds, their economy suffers because they have a lower access to dollars and a higher dollar funding cost. All right, because they do not have the dollar collateral to get the dollars. So China's economy is really, really terrible right now, and it has been for years. You have, again, partisan activities going on at factories that are basically, you know, owned by the country, not just the normal Chinese power play of, hey, you're going to have, you know, a party wing in your company. It's not just that. It's like basically outright ownership of these factories. They are basically state-run factories, not the pseudo nonsense that normally goes on in China. So China's economy really bad. These tariffs really do hurt them. Like they are trying to offload as much stuff as possible, but there's dollar flow problems. You have serious confidence problems in Xi, not just coming from the party elders, but the party itself and the people. You have a growing probability of outright rebellion in China because of the authoritarianness, and it's due to the economic situation. When the economic situation wasn't so bad, it was the people were able to put up with it. Now things are really tanking and have been for a while. You got that problem. Whereas now in America, okay, you're going through, again, a euro dollar cycle. You're going to see a downturn. You're seeing economic indicators saying recession very much, and you're also seeing indicators saying, hey, you know, maybe not this year, maybe in say 2 years, you're going to start to see a repeat of say 2007. You could, like, that's a possibility. It's not set in stone. There's a lot of things moving on, but the economy is generally heading in that direction. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. If you're Canadian, you know that because, well, you're already basically in depression economics, and it's gonna get worse. Sorry to tell you that, but like, plan accordingly. It's gonna get pretty bad. Canada's not going to be very insulated like it was last time around. Anyways, this disentanglement that is happening is mostly peaceful. Like, there's no full on hot activities happening yet. You've got very much dangerous activities on the side of the Chinese and the Americans. Um, but I would say the Chinese ones are much worse, such as earlier in the year when I went on about, hey, not once but twice, a week or two apart, uh, what you must consider a bioweapon was smuggled into the United States that would have attacked the wheat of not only the United States, but also would have spread into Canada most likely. And I say you have to consider it a bioweapon. It is a naturally occurring, it is a virus or bacteria, something like that, that attacks wheat, that is native to China, but smuggled in, you know, vials over here to North America to wheat that is not resistant to it. That's a bioweapon in my books. So you've got that problem. I I think this is so far mostly talk. Like, The Chinese need someone to sell their rare earths to. Absolutely. Like, they are in a shortage problem. They need dollars. Who better to sell it to than the United States? The United States needs those minerals to continue to have their military industrial complex and other very important industries that are very well struggling because they can get choked out by this lack of access from China. So I think they're going to come to an understanding, and you'll continue to see the United States make power plays like with Argentina and to a lesser extent Canada that will get the Americans access to these rare earths, to these critical minerals that they don't exactly have in abundance yet. So there's that. This is very much going to reshape the way trade has been done and will likely be done. Like, you're seeing again the disentanglement, the multipolar world come about. You'll likely see more and more factories, not relatively soon. Like, again, we have to get through the recession that we're going through, or hit that point where it is more viable and easier for banks to build a factory where it is more profitable to do so than just, pocket the spread on interest rates on bonds. Like, they're still in the United States relatively high. Once they come down to say 2-3% against the whole curve, you'll probably start to see those loans slowly roll out into, like, maybe not into AI and the production of chips, because that seems to be going not very well for those companies. Their long-term forecasts, or my long-term forecasts for them, because there's very much a freaking bubble. Like, I really do think you'll see in a couple of, like, say in a year or two, a fire sale on, like, what is it A100s or H100s? I forget which one is the designation for the AI chip that can be sold to China and the one that can't from NVIDIA. I do not remember, but that's basically like OpenAI will and other AI companies that bought a whole bunch of those will be fire selling those, and I think I might pick up a couple if I can, because not for AI shenanigans, for just raw power, because they're insanely powerful. I want to brute force stuff, because why not? Anyways, you're very much seeing the reshaping of trade in the world, like many predicted Trump would attempt to do. It's quite dangerous because the status quo makes things predictable. New things are not. That's why you're seeing reactions in the market. We'll see what happens from my perspective tomorrow and the rest of the week, because very much you could see this being a big enough black swan event, depending on how long this lasts, that does eventually take down the market, because it just so happened to happen on October 10th, which was the peak of the S&P 500 in 2007, and that's when the long decline started. Like, when I woke up and I saw the small pullback, I'm like, man, really? I get this. I don't want to repeat that. Not yet. Like, I know it's coming, most likely. Just, and then, Trump and Xi made their things, and it's like, oh, great. There'll probably be a bounce back, though. Like, there's still a lot of profitability and liquidity in the financial markets, which will keep that stuff popping up. But we're very much in a rate cutting cycle, like, you know. Um, so, but yeah, like I think the hardest thing about this disentanglement for, like, from the perspective of the Americans is like, right now the entire supply chain like leads back to China. So reconfiguring that is extremely difficult. And the hardest thing that the Chinese are going to go through is like, again, they need American dollars. Like, they need that constant cash flow from Wall Street, um, to keep their house of cards standing. If it stops, which it slowed down significantly in the last couple of years, you get into severe societal problems because the economy just tanks and the Chinese people aren't very happy. And while there is a lot of propaganda, like, you have a lot and lot of anger. Um, do not be surprised if China goes into a civil war. And definitely don't be surprised if, like, the Pacific Fleet completely contains the South China Sea and like the rest of the borders around, or the ocean around China. Like, and do not be completely afraid if you catch wind of, like, hey, there are U.S. Uh, JSOC, the people who work with JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command, operating in China to secure nuclear weapons. Like, do not be surprised at that. That is a very real possibility. Like, Xi does not have 100% control on his country or his party. You could have some severe problems. I very much think, though, it goes similarly to the way of something along the lines of either what happened with the Soviet Union when you had power switched, or it could be something along the lines of the first couple times with the French Revolution, where power changed hands, but the figurehead stayed on. It was relatively peaceful. It was more of along the lines of a palace coup. Communists, or Chinese communists, do love a good palace coup. Let's be real there. Let's look at Chinese history. They love a palace coup. I mean, they love civil war too. Um, I know it's completely romanticized, but the romance of three kingdoms is, a thing that somewhat happened. What happened in reality, who knows? Because it was made into a saga, the Chinese equivalent of a saga, for a reason. Anyways, it's very interesting, very dangerous, very exciting. May you live in interesting times, curse times 1,000. That's the video for today. I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving weekend, had a good Thanksgiving Monday. And I will see you tomorrow with something. I don't know what, as of yet. It is more than 12 hours before I have to start thinking about that. So, I'll leave you with this. Have a good day.